Hello, everyone. Simon Walker here. We've got Jonas Pilz as well. And hiding behind the scenes is Darren Frankovitz. We're all getting ready to set up for the second of these webinars today. Let me just check we got all the settings correctly and separate out my questions panel and so on. Oh, hi, Celio. You're like an old friend now because you've been on so many of these. So welcome back. It's great to see you. And hi from Toronto again, Stephen. Excellent. This is great. I keep forgetting your town, Jonas. Whereabouts is it in Germany?
It is Coburg. Pretty
Coburg,
much
that's right.
In the middle, like 300 kilometers east of Frankfurt.
Goodness, that far from Frankfurt?
Yes.
Wow. That's. I know you were telling me about your train journeys, but that's quite a journey.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
It is.
Good morning, Edward. Good morning, Stephen. Oh, thanks for the comment, Stephen. Yes, it's an interesting time, isn't it? How we all managing our different workflows and different working scenarios. So appreciate the comment. Thank you. I mean, that's why we're increasing the regularity of these sessions, really, because we recognize that there's a variety of reasons why you might have some time to spare with us. So we're trying to make these more regular and cover more of the sorts of topics that you might find useful as well. And in fact, that segue brings me nicely onto the PDF that I'm sharing here. So those of you who have watched some of the previous sessions will know this, but this PDF has a link to my email address. So if you've got any contact information that you want to share with me or requests for future sessions, please let me know, simon@redgiant.com. I'm the Director of Training for Maxon and for Red Giant. And also it has a list of all the sessions that we're running this week, including the ones for tomorrow. So please feel free to register for those. You'll find this PDF inside the handout section of the webinar software. And as mentioned before, if you go onto a previous webinar, like yesterday's, you can click on the dates and that will take you through to the recording. So if you missed yesterday's, please click on those and then you can watch the recording of both sessions. Hi, Sean. Thanks for saying hello. Hi, Matthias. Great. So we have so much stuff to go through today. So I'm going to hand over to Jonas, who is our Cinema 4D expert extraordinaire, who's been working for Maxon for, is it five years now, isn't it?
Yeah, in October it's going to be 5 years. Yes.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations. And just I'm so excited for these sessions because I'm in the background, I'm just scribbling notes about how many small little tips that you're sharing and reminders about things that I've forgotten. So this is brilliant. And you've got some fantastic rendering tricks coming up. So let's hand over to you. Let me change the screen to you. There we go. And let's make you a presenter. Here we go. And what we're going to do, we'll try on this session, we're going to turn off our webcams in case that affected the sync between audio and video. So I'm going to turn mine off as well. And
yeah.
We should see now your screen, Jonas, which is a warehouse concrete floor with a golden dancer on it. So if you're watching this and attending, please, would you mind just confirming that? If you can see that, just type a little question in the questions box. That'd be lovely. And oh, thanks, Sean. Thanks, Edward. Thanks, Henry and Andreas. Brilliant. Okay, great. And we'll do, I see gold guy. Excellent. Thanks, Celia. So we'll do questions answer as we go through. Darren is going to be answering those and giving fantastic links to other resources as we go through. But we'll also have a quick Q&A at the end, or if you've got anything absolutely specific, then I'll interrupt Jonas and I'll ask him. 2 quick questions answered that we usually get. One is, yes, this session is being recorded and you automatically get the link to it via email. And secondly, Jonas has kindly shared some of the resource files and the scenes that he's creating today. You'll get those in a download link as well. Fantastic. Okay, over to you, Jonas.
Right, so let's start. As Simon already said, my name is Jonas Pilz, and I work for Maxon as a trainer. And in this session, we are going to cover, well, quite a few things. The first will be motion tracking. The next one will be adding character animation from Mixamo. And then we will dive a little bit into volumes. And then we will do some experimental render setup that will end up in very fast rendering, but we're going to use 3 renderers for that. In the end, summing up everything, there will be a render time of less than 7 seconds per frame, which is awesome. So let me just show you what we're going to create now. So we are going to create the 3D part, the Cinema 4D part of this shot. So I hope it runs quite smoothly and we don't have a very bad frame rate, but I know that GoToWebinar usually has a frame rate of 10 to 12 frames per second. I will scrub through the timeline here a little bit slower so you can see everything. We've got this golden dancer and he leaves these trails behind his feet and also behind his hands. And later in compositing, well, not today, but in tomorrow's session, we will add the compositing effects with Trapcode Particular and also do some color correction. So we've got these sparks here that are particular and also some very subtle smoke that is also particular. And yeah, that's basically the shot. Looking very cool. And let's start doing this from scratch. So I will just close my picture viewer. And because I want to start with the motion tracking, I will adjust the layout or change the layout to be the motion tracker layout. So here we go. This is the motion tracker layout. And here there is a window that asks us to double click to create a motion tracker object. So I will do that. And now it created a motion tracker object. And the window asks me to double click to select some footage. And I will do that also. So I'm going to select the first frame here of this JPEG sequence. And this is already the first tip that I can give you, that you try to track, or that you always track image sequences instead of movie files. That just works a little bit better and can prevent you from small errors. In here, in the motion tracker object, once it's selected, we've got a few tabs, and we are starting with the footage tab. In here, we've got the footage linked, and we can resample this. And I usually resample my footage to 50%, which means that it will, track half of the resolution in width and height. Well, you might ask yourself, why does it do that? Isn't it better to track the full resolution? And there are cases where it is better, but in case you have got a little bit of grain in the footage, it is better to resample it and make it smaller, because then the tracker doesn't get distracted by grain. So this is basically the shot, and I will play the timeline once, because this will cache all of the frames here. And after that, we can really work very quickly. And the cool thing about the motion tracker is that the tabs represent the steps that you have to take from the left to the right and to the next line here in that case. So we're starting with the footage, setting up the footage, then we're going to 2D track the whole thing, and after that we're going to create a 3D solve of the whole thing. And after that, maybe that's optional, we can create some 3D reconstruction of the tracked shot. Okay, let's go back to frame 0, and let's also go to the next tab here, to 2D tracking. And actually, everything we need to do is to click on auto track here. But before I do that, I always increase the number of tracks here to something like 500. I actually didn't test in the last releases if that makes any difference, but I think it does, so I'll do it. It's some kind of routine here. And after setting this up, you simply have to click on auto track. And now you see in the lower left that Cinema 4D is processing all of the frames forwards and backwards. So it starts from frame 0 to frame 200, and then it goes back already. And in a few seconds, you will see the result of the 2D tracking. Here we go. If we scrub the timeline now, you see that we've got these little dots that are moving over the surface, and they are sticking to a specific feature in the filmed footage. And you can also see the arcs here. That's the movement. And yeah, the next step would already be to filter some of these out. Of course, that's optional, but you can do that by simply enable more of these filters. There are already 2 of them enabled, but we can also filter by error threshold and bring the error threshold down to 10%. This way we can get rid of a few trackers in this area. If I do that again, you can see that these are tracks that have a lower, or that are worse than 10% error. And then I will go to 3D Solve and set this up. Actually, there's nothing to be done. Solve mode should be full 3D reconstruction. We don't know the focal length, but it is constant. And now we can just hit Run 3D Solver. That's basically the whole process to make Cinema 4D track a shot. And I hope it will run fast. This is actually something where speed highly depends on the workstation you have. I'm right now on a MacBook Pro. If you are on a 16 core or 32 core workstation, this process can be just a matter of seconds. And what it does right now is it compares the trackers here and analyzes the parallax between them. And this way it finds out the camera position and camera movement that happened in real life. So it mimics the real camera movement, and this way you can place 3D objects in the scene, and yeah, they will just stick to the ground or stick to the floor, for example, and they don't swim. They are just solidly implemented into the shot, which is the base for visual effects work. So right now it was finished. You can see that because we have some green null objects that appeared here. We can make them visible all over the place by just leaving 2D track mode. This will bring back the world grid, and all of the nulls will be visible. And if we now open up the motion tracker here and jump out of the camera, we can see that at frame 0, the camera is in the, or is placed in the scene or in the world origin here. And you can see that the scene is not aligned correctly. So in order to align the scene, we jump back into the camera and we use some constraints here. First of all, I will go to a frame that is pretty much shot in this in the middle of this street here to the backyard. And the first thing I will add is a point constraint, because by using the point constraint, I can define a custom origin of the scene. So I will do that. I click that, and then I just click a null object or one of these null objects to make this the new origin of the scene. And here we go. So now the scene was replaced, or not replaced, but repositioned. And the next thing I want to do is to align this grid to the floor, to the street here. And I can do this by using another constraint. Simply click and drag until you reach the create planar constraint command here. And the create planar constraint asks for 3 input nulls. So I will select this one, then I will select one here, and I will select one in the back. And this will already align our ground plane. So the next thing I want to do regarding alignment is that I want to make the z-axis, which points towards this fence here, I want to make this point towards the middle of the street here, and I can only eyeball that, but let's do that as good as I can. Therefore, I need a vector constraint, because by using the vector constraint, I can define a new axis, a new z-axis, a new x-axis, and a new y-axis. I will just define the z-axis, and I will start with this point here, and then I will go down in a straight line and see if I can find something at some point that is, well, directly under it. So I will choose this one as the second one, and now I will define this as the z-axis, and now that is a bit better. And the other thing we can do with the vector constraint is we can set the length to be known, because this way we can scale the scene. And if we go to the right here, we can tell Cinema 4D that this line, for example, is 2 meters long, like this. And now we completely aligned the scene. So if I jump out of the camera and have a look at this, you see that all of the nulls on the street are now on this ground plane here, and the camera is up here. And if I scrub through the timeline, you can also see that the camera is moving here. So that's perfect. Maybe let's align the axis the other way around. So we reverse the axis here. So we've got this one, and z-axis is pointing towards this direction, so away from the camera. That's usually what you do in 3D space. Okay, so now let's jump back into the camera. Let's look through the camera. And the next thing we can do is already add the guy who's dancing. Before I do that, I will disable, or I will make the auto features here invisible, so we get rid of all of the null objects here. And let's double check the scene again. Looks quite good. Maybe let's also, just for checking everything, let's create a cube, and let's make this 10 by 10 by 10 and move it up by 5 centimeters. And let's see if the cube sticks to the surface. And this looks pretty good. Perfect. I'm happy with that. So I'm going to delete the cube again, and I'm also going to save the scene into my live folder. I'm going to call this Golden Dancer, and hit save. So here we go. Right. The next thing is I want to go to the startup layout, because we don't need to motion track anymore. And now I'm gonna switch application to Safari and show you this nice little website, which is called Mixamo by Adobe. And this is a really incredible website, because what you can do here is you can search for 3D characters and also download them. But the best thing here is that you can also apply motion capture data to these characters. Let me go to page 1, because here is the character that I used. It's Remy. So let's click this one and use this character. Now we've got this character here. Wait for a second. Maybe we have to update. Here we go. Here he is. And then we can go to the animations menu. And here we can choose from motion capture data, which is awesome. And we also have a search here. So we can type in breakdance and hit enter. And these are all of the animations that are tagged or named breakdance. And I will use the breakdance freezes here. And once I click that, you see that the guy starts dancing. And now here's the answer to the question, how can I bring this guy to Cinema 4D? It's pretty easy. You just need to click download, and here you choose a format. FBX is okay. With skin, so you can download him with or without skin, which means that either you download him with all geometry or without, so just the joint skeleton. 30 frames per second is also okay, and we don't need any keyframe reduction, so we could hit download. I will cancel this because I already downloaded him, and I will also pause the animation here and maybe completely get rid of Safari here. And I will open up my Finder, and I already navigated to the place where I downloaded him to. And this is the FBX file, and I simply want to drag and drop this file into Cinema 4D. Then the FBX import settings pop up, and I just want to make sure that we don't add textures and materials. It's already unchecked. So I hit OK, and this will create a new scene with the dancer in it. So if I hit play, he starts dancing, and I can orbit around, and it's all cool. So let's prepare him for import to the other scene. First of all, I want to get rid of these tags here. These are post-morph tags. We don't need them. And I also want to group all of these objects. And for that, I'm going to use a null object. Just select all of the other objects and move them inside of the null here. I'm going to rename this to dancer. And now he is already prepared. So I can just select him and use the shortcut Control-C or Command-C on Mac. And then I use the shortcut V and go to Projects, Golden Dancer, back to my scene here. And here I will use the shortcut Control-V to import him. All right, so as you can see, he is way too big, jumping around here. And let's scale him down. And I try that with the default settings here. So I bring him down, and you can see that this breaks the rig completely, and it's all a mess. So we need to find out a way how to scale him down without any of these issues. So I undo this, and all we need to do is to change the mode. We need, or by default, we are in model mode, but we need to switch this to object mode, which has got this film strip here. So we adjust the mode to object. And now if we select the dancer and scale him down, you will see that these values here change. The scale values for the whole object change. So I will scale him down to something like this. And I will also rotate him to something like this. And maybe let's scrub through the timeline so we can see what he's doing. It's not too bad. It's not too bad. I will bring him more to the front and scale him down a little bit more, because what I want is that his feet are still inside of the picture, or not too much outside of the picture. So this is what I'm after. Looking quite good. Maybe I can rotate him a little bit more to something like that. That's looking good. All right. Nice. So the next thing I want to do is to check if the animation is really set up correctly. And to check that, I'm gonna leave the perspective view and go to front view. And in here, I'm gonna scrub the timeline again, because I want to check if he's on the ground floor. So let's check this. And you can see now he still is, but here he's not on the ground. So he's floating actually. And later, when we want to create some contact shadows or an ambient occlusion pass for contact shadows in After Effects later, we need him to have his hand on the ground. So we need to animate the Y position of the guy here in order to bring him down. And to do so, I'm going to go to frame 40. That's okay. I'm going to select the dancer null object, and I'm going to set a keyframe at position Y. Then I'm going to go to frame 60, because here the hands should be on the ground, and I bring him down to something like that. That's okay. Set another keyframe, then go to this frame, because here, let me see, here, he comes back on his feet, and as you can see now, he's underneath the ground plane. So we need to animate this back, and we will do that here. And I will set a keyframe at frame 126, and here I'm going to set the keyframe for 0 in Y position. Let's see if that works. Well, maybe let's just select these two keyframes and move them one frame to the front or to the beginning. Here we go. That looks good. And now we can work with that. Okay. I'm happy with that. So I'm going to jump back to perspective view. And the next thing I want to do is to create some light objects. And these light objects should be placed somewhere here in the control rig, on the position or at the positions of the hands and of the feet, because I want to bring them later to After Effects and use them as particle emitters for Trapcode Particular. So let's create these lights, but before I want to select the joints that these lights should be children of. So I'm going to unfold this down the spine, and here we've got the left shoulder, so we go down the left shoulder until we are here, and we select the left hand middle. Then we are going to do the same thing with the right shoulder. We go down the hierarchy and select the right hand middle. Next, we're going to unfold the leg, the left one, and select the foot. And then we're going to do the very same thing with the right foot. So this is actually the one that we want to use. And now we've got these 4 objects selected. You can also see that here 4 joint elements or 4 joint objects are selected. And now I want to create a light source. But I want to streamline this. So I hold down Shift. And if I hold down Shift and add a light, it will add 1 light per object and also as a child of this object. So I will do that. Hold down Shift, click the light, and here you go. Now we created 4 lights. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And these are in the correct positions. So now let's go to the General tab of the lights, because the lights are already selected, and check no illumination. We don't want them to illuminate something. We just want the lights to be there. First, to be traced inside of Cinema 4D to create those nice trails, and second, for emitting some particles in After Effects later. Okay, so now we have got this. And imagine we fold the hierarchy again and we cannot see them, and we have to navigate through to the lights every time we want to use them. That's not very cool, but because they all have the same name, we can now use the magnifying glass here of the object manager and just type in light, and this will bring up all of the lights, and we can just select and deselect them here, which is really cool. Okay, let's just don't search for any name. And now, because they are all selected, I'm going to add a tracer. And the tracer is in the Mograph menu, and what it will do, it will follow specific objects. And if you have objects selected, it will follow them and trace them. So I'm going to create the tracer with the lights selected, and now the lights are already in the trace link field here. And if I play the animation back here, you can see that we are creating these trails already. They are a little bit too long because they last for the whole length of the scene. So I want to limit them. And to do so, I go down to the limit parameter and say I want to limit from the end and by, well, let's say 20 frames. And let's play this back again. That's looking much better. Okay, happy with that. But there's another thing that I'm not happy with, and that is the linear interpolation between the spline points here. And I can get rid of that by adjusting the spline type here from linear to B-spline. As you can see, it's still linear because we don't have any intermediate points. So we go down to intermediate points and just tell it to use a uniform number, 8 in this case, for intermediate points. And now you can also see that all of the splines are very smooth now. And if I play the animation back, it's all very cool. Right, but if we compare this to our animation from the beginning, you can see that we don't just have one streak here behind the feet, but it's actually 3, and they are somehow, yeah, they are not parallel. They are moving very organically. So here they are, well, not very close together, and here they are close together, for example. And we want to create the very same thing, and therefore we need more objects to be traced. So the easiest way to do that is a procedural way, so we don't have to take care of the animation of these. And this can be done by adding some nulls as children of the light objects. So let's search for the light objects again, light, and here we have got the light objects. We select them, all of them, and then we go to the primitives menu, and here there is the null object, and we hold down shift to create a null for every single light as a child. But of course you cannot see it right now because we are filtering the object manager by name, and we type in light, but the name of the nulls is null. So if I add light to the name here, we can see the nulls, and we can see that they are children of the light sources. Now, the next thing I want to do is to create another set of light nulls. And this time I'm going to hold down Command and add another null, because this will create the nulls on the same hierarchical level as the selected ones. So here we go. And I'm also going to modify the name here so that they are all called light null. And I'm happy with that. Let's just filter the light nulls out. Here we go. This is just the light nulls. And right now they are in the very same position as the light source objects. If I want to add some procedural animation here, I need to right click and go up to animation tags and use the Vibrate tag. The Vibrate tag is a very powerful thing for random animation. You can simply enable positions, scales, rotations, and they will be randomized. So I check enable position, and I will use a value of 40 by 40 by 40, and the frequency should be a little bit higher. And if I play back the animation here, maybe we can go to another frame here. You can see that the light source of the left hand is directly on the left hand, but the null is a bit offset. And this is because of the light null of the Vibrate tag. So, but we just see one null object here because all of these tags have got the same seed, and therefore they are performing the very same animation. We don't want that. So we select every second one of these and just change the seed for these. So here we go. And this should already do the trick. If we go back here, you can see it that here is the light source, and here, these are the nulls around this light source. And what we need to do now is we need to get rid of the filtering, select the tracer, go to its Object tab, and then we're going to filter again, light null. We're going to select all of these, and now we have to go back in the Attributes Manager, and you can do that by using this button. This is like in your browser, go back, and here we have the attributes of the tracer again, and we can simply drag and drop the nulls in. All right, now we can get rid of the filtering because we don't need it anymore, and just play back the animation. And let's see what happens. Look at this. So this is looking quite good. So we've got 3 streaks per foot and per hand, and now we need to add some thickness to them. And I will use the volume builder for that, or the volumes. You could, of course, also use the sweep, but this comes with a few disadvantages. And one of them would be that in very sharp areas here, it would create like streaks here. And the other one is that I cannot achieve this very organic looking effect like here, where they blend and they weld somehow. This can only be done by using volumes. So here is the volume menu, and actually there are some quick tips about volumes. I recorded some. So I think Darren will post the links to the quick tips. First of all, what volumes are, and second, how you can cache them later, because this will also be important for this shot. And let's just select the tracer and add a volume builder. I hold down Alt as I do so, because this will automatically create the volume builder as a parent object of the tracer. And now you see this mess going on, and these are actually representations for the voxels, because we're dealing with a voxel grid here. And voxels are basically 3D pixels. So let me bring down the voxel size to 1. And now I see that I have got many spheres placed on the splines that were created using the tracer. So I select the tracer inside of the volume builder and see if there are some additional settings. And here we go. We've got some additional settings. I will bring down the radius to 1 and bring up the density also to 1. And now you can see the streaks here. Maybe the voxel size isn't small enough. With the voxel size parameter, I can adjust the resolution of the voxels. And now we can see the spheres again. So I will bring up the density to 2, and now I'm pretty happy with that. Let's also add a volume measure, because right now we cannot render this. We need a volume measure to turn this into geometry. I hold down Alt to do so, and now we turned the whole thing into geometry, which is very nice. Right, let's adjust these streaks a little bit more, because I want to make them start very thin, then become thicker, and then in the end they should be thin again. So I select the volume builder, and with the tracer selected, I go down a little bit, and here there is a scale along parameter, and we can use this to make or to scale the thickness along the spline. So I hold down Command or Control on PC and set one more knot here in the middle, and then I will bring down the outer control points here. And this will already create some variation in here, but not per segment, so not per spline segment. Therefore, I need to adjust, or I need to check scale per segment, and this will do pretty much what I wanted to do. So every single spline now has got this thickness curve going on, and I want the thickness to be thicker towards the hands and the feet. So I have to move this point here towards the right. Here we go. And now I will edit the tangents here a little bit, and I'm happy with that. Okay. This is already pretty nice, but the cool thing with volumes is, of course, that you can blend stuff very nicely together. And to do so, we usually use a smooth filter, and you can add a smooth filter by just hitting this little button here. So let's do this, and you see that it all got smoothed out, but a little bit too much. Of course, we could adjust this by using the strength here, but we can also adjust the voxel distance parameter and bring this down a little bit to 1. And here you can see that the streaks are a bit longer now, and they are blending together. Maybe let's go to the tracer again and bring this one up more to the right. So we just bring the streaks here more to the feet and to the hands. Or maybe that was a little bit too much. Yeah, maybe this is okay. Good. And the last thing I want to add here is a cache layer, because if you play back the animation, you see that the viewport frame rate clearly suffers from the calculation of the volume. It's all done live, and it's heavy calculations going on. So let me select the volume builder again. And here we've got an icon that brings up, or that creates a cache layer once we click it. And the cache layer is red by default, which means nothing is cached on this frame. And we can check animation and type in, okay, we want to do this from frame 0 to frame 200 and cache everything. So now it caches the whole thing. And I think we have time for 1 or 2 questions in the meantime.
We had a couple of requests for your download files, Jonas.
Okay.
The link you gave me earlier didn't seem to resolve. So what we'll do, we'll check that link. Thanks for pointing that out. Would you mind just resending that to me, and we'll make it sure it's in the email that follows up this webinar.
Okay, so the link didn't work.
Yes.
Okay, that's
effectively.
Yeah, we will fix that.
What we're doing with that link, by the way, is that we've got a link to, in fact, I'll let you explain it, Jonas, but we're having to link to the Mixamo character rather than include that in the download.
Yeah, exactly. So the Mixamo character is something coming from Adobe. And of course, Adobe doesn't want us to give the assets to you because they want you to log in to Mixamo. That's the trick behind it. Yeah, but it's definitely worth it because it's all for free, and you can just download the characters and the animations, the motion capture animations, and it's included in your Creative Cloud. So all you need to do is to go to Mixamo, choose your Creative Cloud credentials, log in, and then you can use it.
Fantastic. Quick other question, if I may, please, Jonas. Byron's asked, is there a workflow to make sure the character in real life size is in the footage, or is it always by eye?
That's a good question. Of course, you can, if he's standing here.
Scale project?
Well, yeah, we can scale the project, of course. But we can also eyeball him to, well, right now, that's, let me go to the dancer. We can just create some cube to check the size. I think he's rather small at the moment. So yeah, he's less than 1 meter tall, which means that I failed guessing the right scale for the vector constraint. So if I really knew that it was 2 meters, everything would be fine, that we could scale him to be like 180 centimeters, and then it would all fit. But yeah, I think that was, I'm pretty sure that this was my fault in failing at guessing the length here.
Let's not call it failing. Let's call it an efficient workflow.
Yeah. So if you really shoot something, having in mind that you want to motion track it, it always makes sense that you have some measures of the shot. Because if you know, for example, the distance from this manhole to this manhole, this can help you a lot. Or if you know the distance from this point to this point, it also helps you a lot, because then you would work in the correct scale. And not as we do right now. Yeah, that's basically the trick. Take some measures at the movie set, and this will prevent you from doing things wrong. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Okay, so right now in the volume builder, you can see that the cache layer turned green, which means that everything has been cached, and viewport feedback is much faster now, which is perfect. Okay, let me make the Mixamo control rig here invisible. So we just have the dancer in here, and the next thing we want to do is to create some materials. So let me go to this frame maybe, and the dancer is going to be golden. So what I want to do is save at first, and then I double click in the material manager, and I double click the material, rename it to be gold, and then I'm gonna switch off the color channel, and in the reflectance channel I'm going to delete the default specula and add a Ggx reflection layer. This is the reflection model that suits best for metals. And there's a whole section in the Cinema 4D help files about that. You can access that, by the way, simply by right-clicking any parameter and go to Show Help. This will bring up the online help, and you can also switch between different languages. But that is just a little side note, because what I want to show you is the quick way to set up a gold material. Down here in the Layer Fresnel section, we can choose between two object types. These are the two material types that exist: dielectric materials and conductor materials. And metals like gold are obviously conductor materials. So I choose Fresnel conductor, and then the presets are not grayed out anymore, and I simply go up to gold, and that's my gold material. So it's as easy as that, but I want to add some more like variation to this shot or to this material. So I want to bring up the roughness a little bit, and then the next thing I'm going to do is to control the roughness strength using a texture map. And if you unfold this little arrow here, you see that roughness can take a texture input. So what I do is I go to the content browser, which is a very rich library of objects, of example scenes, of materials, and also textures that comes with Cinema 4D. So you have that for free. And I search for a smudge map. Here we go. These are the smudge maps that are available, and I really like this one. So I'm going to drag and drop this one onto the roughness texture field. And here we go. Now the roughness is controlled using that texture map. So black areas mean that roughness is applied by 0%, so no roughness, and white areas mean that roughness is applied by 30%, so 100% of this slider. So if I bring that up to 50, for example, white would mean 50%, but we will go with 30%. What if I want this texture, or what if I want this roughness range to be from 15 to 30%? Well, it's pretty easy. If black represents 0 and white represents 1, a value of 50% gray would represent 0.5, or 50% of these 30%. So I will click this little button here and go down to add a colorizer. And I open up the colorizer, double click the black knot, and bring it up to 50%. And now I have an image going from 50% gray to white. And I'm happy with that, so I can go up one level. Then I want to add some additional variation, and I'm going to do this in the layer mask channel, or in the layer mask section. I'm going to search for another smudge map, and I will use this one. Just drag and drop it in here, And you see now there's a little bit more variation going on. For example, these little dirt dots or this one here. And the last thing I want to add here is a bump. And I'm going to use a scratch map in here. So I'm going to search for scratch, hit enter, and here's everything that has something to do with scratches or that has got scratch in the name. And I'm going to use this scratch map here and just drag and drop it onto the texture input field for the bump, and also bring down the bump strength to 3%. Now let's apply this material or assign this material to the dancer, and let's have a look at him. That's already pretty good, but I want to increase the viewport texture resolution, and therefore I have to go to the editor section here, and I need to adjust the texture preview size. The default is 128 by 128. I need to set it to 512 by 512. And now you can see that the scratches are, they are crisper than before. Still, the whole texture is a little bit too big for my taste, but I will fix that in the material tag here, because here we can tile the whole texture, and I will go with the value of, let's try 3 by 3, which looks perfect to me. So as you can see here, we've got a lot of detail going on here, which is perfect. Okay, the next thing I want to do is I want to create an iron material for the streaks here. So I'm just going to create a copy of that gold material by holding down Control or Command on Mac, rename it to iron and double click. And then I go to the reflectance channel, and down here in the layer Fresnel, I just, use another preset, iron. And here we go. That's basically the whole thing. Maybe in the layer mask, I can bring down the mix strength of this texture here. And this will already do the trick. Now I can assign it to the volume measure here. And I can see that I'm not very happy about the projection. I want to have a little bit more detail in there. So I adjust the projection to be cubic mapping. And then I'm also going to use some tiling here. 5 by 5 should be good. And yeah, look at this. Now we've got some scratches on here that we can see. Yeah, here we can see them very clearly. And I'm really happy with that. Okay, I'm going to save the scene. And now we can prepare the scene for rendering. And to do so, I'm gonna fold this one and also this one. And another thing I want to do is I want to get rid of the whole motion tracker object. And I'm just going to drag out the camera here and delete the motion tracker object, because the animation of the camera movement is baked into the camera. And now we've got this, and can set this up a little bit more. The first thing I need for contact shadows on the ground is some ground object. So I'm going to create a plane and make it a little bit bigger so that it's in the frame completely, or that the back line here is in the frame. And I'm going to create a copy of that one and just move it to the back, rotate it by 90 degrees, like so, and scale it up so that these two objects now cover all of the background. We need that for the ambient occlusion pass. Now I'm going to make this one a child of the other plane and call this one background, or BG. Then the next thing I need is a new material, and this material should be completely black, because a material without any attributes renders incredibly fast. So let's assign this material to the background, And I will show you in a minute why I do that. Okay, next thing, deactivate the whole background or make it invisible in the viewport as well as in the rendering. And there is one thing left to do, which is we select the camera and we adjust the focus distance. Because later, what I want to do is, let me bring up the rendering here. There is one critical part, and it's this one. Have a look at the particle emitter here on the left hand. We need some mask to obscure the emitter here behind the right arm. And we cannot do this using obscuration layers in particular, because it's in between in this image plane then. So we need to create a mask for that. And this is exactly what I want to do with the custom depth rendering. And therefore, I want to adjust the focus distance or the focal plane to always be linked to the neck joint of the dancer. So I'm going to unfold the dancer and let's have a look where the neck joint is. Here we go. And I'm just going to drag and drop this one into the focus object link field here. And if we have a look from the top, you can see that no matter where he is, the focus plane is always assigned to his neck joint, which is really cool. The other thing I will also prepare right now is I want to add the depth of field map front blur, but this will also make much more sense later. And I'm going to set the end here to 10 centimeters. This will all make sense in a second. Because now I'm going to set up the render layers. And I think I need 10 more minutes for that. So we will make this webinar a little bit longer than 1 hour. I hope that's okay for you guys.
That's great, Jonas. Thanks for squeezing this all in. So yeah, bear with everyone. We're going to slightly run over by, as Jonas says, 5 to 10 minutes, but it'll be worth it.
Definitely, definitely. Because what I'm setting up now, or what I'm going to set up now, is 3 different renderers. And in the end, we can render this whole sequence here with less than 7 seconds per frame render time. And that is just awesome. All right.
So you just got the official okay from a whole bunch of people to go over time.
Perfect. So, perfect. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Elio. Thanks, Sergey. Thanks, Edward. Thanks, Scott. Yeah. Right.
I appreciate it, and I think that you will definitely like the result. So let me go to the takes manager. And if you never use takes, takes were introduced with release 17 of Cinema 4D, and they are actually a tool or a tool to create states of a scene. So you can create scene iterations, design iterations, but you can also use these takes to create some render layers. And this is especially powerful when you combine it with the render settings here, because here you can create your own render settings and you can link them up. So first of all, let me adjust something here in the main render settings. I go to save, to the save section, and I will adjust the format to be PNG, and I will check alpha channel and also straight alpha. Straight alpha will just create a better alpha, and you can see that on the edges of 3D renders, if there is a gray or a grayish outline, it wasn't rendered with straight alpha. If you don't have that outline, if it's clean from the beginning, straight alpha was checked. So that's actually the better alpha. Right, so let me bring up the Finder. And let me go one up, and let's go to my live folder. And what you can see here is just the Golden Dancer C4D file. what we can do here, and this is very essential, is we can tell Cinema 4D to create layers for us, and we can also create, or we can also use variables in the output path, which is awesome because then we have to just type in one output path and it will create different output paths for all of the takes, for example, that we are going to render. So what I do is, starting from the Golden Dancer C4D, or from this folder, I will type in /, which means from this folder, create a new one, which is going to be called render, then /, then let's go to this little button here, because this brings up the render tokens, which are the variables that we can use, and we're going to use the project name. So $PRJ is the project name variable. Then we make an underscore, and then we go to current take name, and we're going to use this as well. So now we will copy this one and place it on the back again. So what this will create once we hit render is a folder here that is called render. Inside of that folder, it will create another folder that is called Golden Dancer, because this is the project name, plus the take name that we then assigned. And inside of that folder, it will create a PNG image sequence. And this is awesome. So let me create the takes and the render settings. First of all, I want to create the render setting for the viewport rendering, because what you see here actually is, as I told you, 3 renderers. The beauty path, which is all of the reflection and so on, is just the viewport render. So this is the viewport. It's not a render like standard physical, ProRender, Redshift, or whatever. It's viewport. Then I created the contact shadows here with an ambient occlusion path within ProRender. And the last pass will be coming from standard renderer, which will be the depth pass. So we're going to set all of this up. First of all, the viewport renderer. Okay, let me add a new take here, simply by pressing this button, and we're going to call this VP for viewport. And then we're going to create a new child render setting of this one, because this will inherit all of the render settings except for the changes I make. So I create this new child, and you can see that it already inherited the file path and so on, and the format. And I will also call this VP. And then if I select it, I can change the renderer. I will use hardware OpenGL, which is the viewport renderer. And in the settings for the viewport renderer, I will enable enhanced OpenGL. I will also enable screen space ambient occlusion and reflections. And then I will enable anti-aliasing of 2. 2 is enough, because I will also add some super sampling of 2 by 2. And that's my render setting for the viewport. So what I'm going to do is, with the viewport take selected, I'm going to link this render setting to this take. And I can do this by hitting this button, and then I go down and use VP. And now you see that it's now using the VP render setting. If I go back to the main take, it will use the my render setting here. Okay, let's have a look what we need to change. Actually, there is nothing that we need to change, so I will hit save. And because we are on frame 17 and the output is set to export or to render frame 70, we can hit render and see what the result will be. So here we go. This is the result. And in the layers here, in the layer section, we can also see that this is the alpha. So one thing that I don't like is that we see the world grid here and everything else. I just want to have this guy and nothing else. Okay, so how can we do this? Actually, I'm just going to go to the filter settings of the viewport and set them all to none. This will get rid of everything inside of the viewport. And now we need to know what we need to enable or to re-enable. The dancer is a polygon object, so we need to enable polygons. And the streaks from the volume builder or from the volume measure are a generator. So we need to enable generators as well. And now we got it all. So if we hit render now, and we really want to override this, we have this. This is the alpha. So there is no grid inside of that. And now let's have a look at the Finder, because what we have here now is next to the Golden Dancer C4D, there is the folder called render. Inside of the folder called render, there's another folder called Golden Dancer _VP. And in here, there is our rendering. And now we're going to do the very same with the others. So, or with the other renderers, with the other paths that we need, passes. Right, so in order to do so, we need to create another take. This take will be our ambient occlusion take. I will call it AO. And we're also going to create a new render setting here, a child render setting of the my render setting, new child, and we will call this AO as well. And in here, we will use ProRender because ProRender is really fast in rendering ambient occlusion. So let's set this up. We just need the offline settings. I will change the render mode from global illumination to ambient occlusion. That's the most important part. And then I will reduce the ray depth. We don't need too much. And I will also reduce the samples per iteration. And then for progressive rendering, we just need an iteration count of 20. And for the refresh rendering interval, we use 20 as well. So that's our render setting. We also want to link this render setting to the take. So we click this little icon here and choose AO. And now you can see that it switches here depending on the take that I selected. And now we need to adjust some things here in the scene, because let me just save. If I now enable ProRender, and we need to use the offline settings here for the renderer, because this is what we set up. And if I start ProRender, you see that once it has been loaded to the GPU, it renders and it creates a very nice image here with a black background. And this is what we don't want, because we need some contact shadow here and we need the background to be white. So we need to make some further adjustments here. Let's stop ProRender. And what I will do is I will create some overrides, because this is the whole concept of takes. You inherit everything from the main take, from the scene, and then you create overrides. And this way you create variations of the scene. And you can do that in two ways. The faster way is to use the auto take, but you have to be very careful about that, because you shouldn't forget to disable this mode later, because otherwise you can really mess up your scenes. And then we go to the Objects tab, and we will make the background object visible. This is actually why we created the whole background object. And then we will override the gold and the iron material by using this black material. So here we go. That's everything we need here. Let's go back to the takes manager and disable auto take mode. And now we can start ProRender again. And here we see the nice contact shadow, and we see that the background is white. Right, let's stop this, save the whole thing. And now let's render to the picture viewer, because this will also render the whole thing to the hard drive. But before we do so, I need to adjust something else. Let me go to the ambient occlusion render setting, and under save, we don't need the alpha channel here. Right, now we can hit render. And as you can see here, for now, it needed 6 seconds to calculate this. And if we have a look at the Finder, we see the render folder. And if we go inside, you see that there is another folder now, golden dancer _AO, because AO is the take name that we have in our output path variables. And in here, there's the golden dancer AO frame 70. If I make this, if I bring this up, you see the rendering. And now we're going to create the last one, the last path, or the last pass, I mean. And to do so, I'm going to create another take, and I'm gonna call this one depth. And I'm also gonna create a new child render setting here, and I'm also gonna name this depth. I can already link them up. We don't need an alpha channel here, but what we do is we will create a multipass. We will just create a depth channel here, so, or a depth pass. So let me click the multipass button here, and down here we will create the depth pass. Now it is in here. We have to activate multipass rendering, and in the save section, I will just copy the path, the output path, over to the multipass image path. I will disable the regular image, and in the multipass image, I will use PNG, and we will also use the layer name as the suffix, which also means that the suffix is going to be _depth, so we can get rid of the _take here. Good. So this is half of it. Now we also need to adjust the scene a little bit, because if we render with standard renderer and we've got a golden material and an iron material, this is going to take very long. So I'm going to tick auto take again, go to the objects, to the objects manager, and I'm going to override these two materials. Here we go. That's it. Now I go back to the takes manager and just quit this auto take mode. Gonna hit save, and now we selected the depth take, and here the depth output render setting is selected. So I'm gonna hit render, and let's see what it will do. We go to the layer section, because here we got the depth pass, and this is exactly what we want. And here you can already see that this is one of the situations where this pass comes in handy, because here we have the left arm and the right arm is not visible. So we can use this as a mask to obscure particles that were emitted from the right hand. It's already a perfect example. So this is basically it. Now let's check the render times. And we will do that by going to the Viewport Renderer first. And in the main render settings, we're going to render all frames so that you can see what this will do. Okay, I saved the project first. It takes a little bit longer because it has the volume cache inside of it, and this one is quite big. So now if I hit render and go to the history tab here, you can see that this is our render time. We're having less than a second per frame, which is incredibly good. I'm going to stop this. Yes. Then let's go to the next take, the ambient occlusion take, and let's render this. This is actually the take that takes the longest. So 5 seconds for the first frame, 5 seconds for the next frame. It's not too much. It's not too much. 5 seconds is definitely acceptable. Also, although we have a scene that is 200 frames long, but you can see how fast this goes, and this way you can create the contact shadows here. It's awesome. All right, but let's let's stop the rendering here. And let's go to the last take that I want to speed test here. So this is the depth channel. It's again less than 1 second. And if you add this all up, it's less than 7 seconds per frame. And this is definitely worth the tricky setup here, because you can do so many things later in compositing. And actually, you really don't need to render for a long time. You can really use the Viewport Renderer for stuff like that. Okay, so let's stop the rendering here. The quick way of setting this up actually is to mark these takes here that we want to render, and then just hit this button once. This is the mark or render marked takes to picture viewer, and it will render one after the other to the picture viewer. All right, the last thing I want to show you is in the Finder. Now here we've got all of the passes. So now they are updated, I guess. So here we've got depth 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. So this is our depth channel. Then here, oh, I think we need to update this. Maybe we need to go back once and come back here. Oh, it needs some update. It should be there because it's using the very same output path. Let me double check that. But it worked in the first place, so why shouldn't it work? All right, I see what I did wrong. So what I did wrong is that I added the depth channel here in the main render setting. Actually, I should have added it here. So let's do that quickly. And I'm going to select this one and add everything here and uncheck this. And if I now render the viewport take, it should work. So that was my mistake. Sorry for that. Stop the rendering. And now we should see the first frames here in the viewport. In the viewport folder. Yeah, that's it. So that was the mistake, but we solved it. Perfect. So in tomorrow's session, because this is now the end of today's session, I'm going to show you how to comp this all together inside of Cinema 4D and how to use the 3D data to create the sparks using Trapcode Particular. And yeah, it's going to be an interesting session. I will show you another setup tomorrow. And now I will hand over to Simon to make the closing.
This is so fantastic, by the way. So brilliant. Let me switch over to me. Here we go. Show my screen. Just wanted to show you the settings for, or rather the settings, the links for tomorrow's session. Here they go. This has been so fantastic, Jonas. In fact, I'm just going to share my webcam. You can probably get away with turning yours on now. We turned off the webcams early on just to make sure that we didn't affect the bandwidth of the animation, but it came through really clearly. But thank you. This has been fascinating. And there's been so many positive comments online. So as Celio says, you are moonlighting as a brain surgeon.
What?
Yes, exactly. Very many comments about the fantastic content as well. And as Edward says, this is priceless. So the more we can overrun, the better. So it's a balance, because we know that you're managing your time, everyone. So, but thank you, Jonas. This is just fantastic stuff. And if you'd like to see the next half, which for me is going to be unmissable, of course, please have a look at the registration links in the PDF document, which you can see in the handout section. And just in case you missed it at the beginning, we've been recording this and we'll get a link to the recording automatically. And in that recording, we'll fix that download link so that we can make sure that you can access the scene file that Jonas has been putting together. And once again, thank you, Darren, for running all the questions and answering those so diligently as we've been going through, because there's a whole bunch of them with interesting takes, and you should have been able to see those as well as we go through. But excellent stuff. I'm still, I know I saw it earlier on, but I'm still loving that trick for speeding up the renders, and also the depth pass, which proves really useful when you get into After Effects. But
Yeah,
that's in tomorrow's session, of course.
Yeah, you will see that tomorrow. It's really worth it. Rendering in or setting up the render in, well, such a confusing way if you're new to Cinema 4D, but it's definitely worth it, diving into the take system and setting up the different render settings, because it saves a lot of time, a ton of time in rendering then. It's awesome.
And this is key, absolutely. As we were talking about yesterday, if you are not at your main computer, let's say you're working at home, and you're likely to be on a laptop or a machine that isn't as fast as you're currently used to. So these are some indispensable tips. Absolutely. Yeah. Brilliant. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for all the kind words. So many kind words for you, Jonas, in the comments.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, Ellie, Nate, Arturo, Tarek, Sean, Byron. Appreciate it. And please tune in tomorrow. We've got 2 of these sessions tomorrow. And once again, if you've got any follow-up questions or you'd like to see different styles of content or anything that we didn't cover, please let me know, Simon at Red Giant, because we're going to be planning to running many of these over the coming weeks. But stay healthy, everyone, and we'll see you on the next one, hopefully tomorrow, if you can join us. Thanks again, Jonas.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.